and then we'll be ready to start the real lesson after we're done with this, okay? So if you want to follow along, this story is called An Owl is a Bird. An owl is a kind of bird. It hunts for other animals to eat. It likes to hunt at night. Some parts of an owl's body help it hunt. An owl has big eyes. It can see well in the dark. An owl's wings have soft feathers. They let an owl fly quietly. An owl can turn its head almost all the way around. That helps it find animals. An owl has sharp claws. They help the owl catch small animals. An owl has a strong beak. The beak helps it carry its food. So now we have a little bit of background on the owls. This is the first story, and I think we're about ready to start our next story, okay? So, we got a lot of papers. So why don't you tuck your papers together? And are you guys ready? Perfect. Okay, I think we're ready to get started.
Okay.
Oh, you're ready?
Yeah.
That's okay. Okay, so today we're going to start the second day of our lesson. Yesterday, we started reading a story about how an owl is a bird. And then today, we're going to read another story about birds to build on that knowledge. Before we get going too far, though, I want us to have a chance to practice with fluency so that as we read our bird stories, we can apply that fluency. So the poem that I picked for us today is kind of a silly poem. It's called I Ate a Chili Pepper. Do you guys know what a chili pepper is?
No.
Have you ever gotten like Papa John's pizza and they have those hot peppers in the corner of the box? Yeah, even hotter than that. So when we're working on our fluency today, we have our fluency rubric that we've been using. And our goal for today is we are really going to focus on phrasing. Phrasing is when you put words together to make a unit of meaning, to make a swoop sound in your voice, rather than reading just like this. That's word by word. We don't want to do that. So with our phrasing rubric, what I'm really going to be thinking about is I added phrasing to my reading. And when I do that, it makes me read with expression. One way I know where to phrase is I look at punctuation. So take a look at your story or at your poem. And I bet you can see at the end of the lines how there's some punctuation. Do you notice any punctuation in this poem? What do you see? What are you pointing to right there? Oh yeah, that's called a semicolon. That's one we probably haven't talked very much, but you're right. There's punctuation right here that lets me know I need to pause. Is there any other punctuation that you see? What else do you see? Sometimes there's punctuation in the middle of our phrases as well when you have like apostrophes and things like that. I'm really looking at the punctuation at the end of phrases. What one do you see? There is a period at the end of a sentence, and we know with a period at the end of a sentence is a pretty good pause, isn't it? We also have yeah, there's a comma as well. There's a couple of commas in here, and commas are kind of a shorter pause. So while I read today, I want you to think about this phrasing and really think about, am I using phrasing where I put several words together in a clump, and does it help with my expression? I ate a chili pepper on a lunchtime dare. Sandy said I'd burn my mouth, but I didn't care. I ate that chili pepper, left not a seed to waste, and won that truly silly bet, but lost my sense of taste. Silly, isn't it? He ate the pepper and it burned his tongue. So you notice there's lots of places where I phrase, where I pause at that punctuation. We didn't talk about these dashes. Dashes are another good place to pause. Did I pause a lot from the first line to the second line, though? I ate a chili pepper on a lunchtime dare. Is there a big pause there? No, there's no punctuation here, so I'm not going to pause. I'm going to keep reading. I want you guys to try reading this poem with me, thinking about our phrasing and our expression. Are you ready? On your mark, get set, go. I ate a chili pepper on a lunchtime dare. Sandy said I'd burn my mouth, but I didn't care. I ate that chili pepper, left not a seed to waste, and won that truly silly bet, but lost my sense of taste. Nice job. So how did you guys know where to phrase? What did we use to help us with our phrasing? Yeah, those marks at the end of the sentence. What is that called again?
Punctuation.
Our punctuation. We used our punctuation. So for right now, can you whisper read that poem? And I'm going to listen while you whisper read. I was listening, in particular, when that first or second line, I noticed we didn't pause because there wasn't punctuation. It's all one long phrase. But once you got to these, you did keep pausing. So the next poem we work on, based on what I was listening to, I think we're doing a really good job with our phrasing and with our expression. We might focus on expression next time to continue to boost that up. I also think that pace might be a good place for us to work on. So we could work on either one of those things the next time we come together with the poem. Go ahead and take your poem and stick it underneath your chair for right now. So we are ready. We have warmed up. We have our fluency going. We'll get to that in just 1 second, actually. That's what we're going to talk about now. We've warmed up our fluency. Now we're ready to apply our fluency to the story we've read. So you did a KWL chart about birds. And now we're ready to come back to that KWL chart, thinking about what we learned about birds. So I want you to take a minute and look down your Ks, what you know. Did any of the things that you already know come up in the story? Did you guys have anything in your list that was in the story?
They can catch fish.
They can catch fish? Was that in our story?
No, but it's an animal.
It is an animal. They talked about animals. Since that was in the story, can you put a little plus next to it? Because you just made a connection that was in the story. Was there anything else on our K side that we already knew that was in the story? What did you have?
I wrote they eat lots of worms and catch worms.
Yeah.
Basically like getting fish.
So it's like the fish is the animals, right? They talked about how they hunt animals in here, so you can put a little plus next to that as well. Did anyone's question get answered? Sometimes our questions get answered, sometimes they didn't. Not yet. So when we read our second story, we're going to keep thinking about that question and maybe any new questions. Before we read our second story, which is Mommy Bird Feeds Her Chicks, can you take 1 minute and just add anything else you learned about birds based on the first story we read? So anything in the K or any questions in the W. So 1 minute, add any details that you know now or that you want to know based on what we read about owls. Every time we read, we're actually adding to our brain. We're adding to our schema. And so we read one story about birds. Now we're going to read another story, and that's going to just keep growing what we know about birds. Before we read, though, there's a couple of words in here that I thought I should point out to you. One word is might. What is the word?
Might.
Good. Might is one of those words that has two definitions. It means there's a chance that something would happen, like it might snow, or I might get a Valentine tomorrow. But in this story, it doesn't mean a chance. It means muscles might. Can you show me muscles might? Oh, good job. So muscles might is this one. There's another word that sometimes you hear when people describe someone as being mighty. It means very strong and they got those muscles. So in our story, it's going to use the word might like muscles. Do you think it would take a lot of might to break down a locked door? Yeah. Do you think it would take a lot of might to lift your pillow off your bed?
No.
No. The muscles is what we're thinking. Why would you need to use a lot of might to open the pickle jar?
Because it's like sealed tight so the pickle juice doesn't fall out.
Yeah, sometimes I have a really hard time getting it. I have to be very mighty to get it off. So that is our word for today. There's also some words in here that you might need help just with reading. And so the word that I want us to start with is the word mouse. How many sounds are in mouse?
3.
Let's do that together. Can you get your fingers out and let's stretch that sound out? Mouse. So mouse has 3 sounds. What's the first sound? Sound is spelled with a perfect. What's the last sound? S. And how is it spelled?
S.
What's tricky about this word is ow is spelled with the vowel team O-U, and there's a silent little E at the end. Yep.
Really?
So that is mouse. What is this word?
Mouse.
Say the sounds.
Mouse.
Mouse. There's another word that has that ow in there as well, and the word is ground. What is the word?
Ground.
Okay, how many sounds?
Ow.
Holy buckets, 5 sounds. But what's the same about the 2 words? What sound was the same?
O-U.
That's the spelling. What was the sound?
Ow.
Ow. So let's do our sounds again.
Ow.
So we're going to know that that's spelled O-U. What's the g spelled?
G.
And
R.
N.
N.
D.
D.
So I wanted you to know these words because they come up in our story a couple of times, and they both have that O-U, ow. Let's go ahead and skywrite mouse. So 2 fingers, straight arm, as straight as you can be. Let's spell mouse. M-O-U-S-E. Nice job. What if I did this? What did I take away?
The E.
I took away the E. What about if I did this one? Don't say it out loud. What did I take away? 1, 2, 3.
U.
What about this one? 1, 2, 3.
S-E.
There you go. Okay, and we could do the same thing with that word ground. Let's go ahead and skywrite it real fast. 2 fingers, nice and rigid. G-R-O-U-N-D. Perfect. Let's go ahead and for this one, let's spell it like a grandma. Put on your grandma voice and spell it just like a grandma. G-R-O-U-N-D. Now it seems silly that we're doing this, but I want to make sure that when you get to these words in the story, you know them automatically. So this word is,
Mouse.
and this word is,
Ground. Mouse. Ground. Ground. Mouse. Ground. Mouse.
awesome. I think you guys are ready. Okay, so while we're reading today, we're going to be using our strategy of asking and answering questions. Good readers are always thinking while they are reading. And when they're thinking, sometimes they ask questions that push them forward into the story, and sometimes they ask questions that make them go back and look for an answer. So I'm going to show you my thinking for the first couple of paragraphs, and then we're going to read it together and make another question, okay? So fingers in the story so I know you're following along. A bunch of chicks, oops, I'll read first and show you my thinking. Then you can read with me. Thanks, though. A bunch of chicks hatch to a mommy bird. She knows her young ones are hungry and that they will need to eat. She knows she has to go hunting for food for them. You know what? I'm wondering something already. She has to go hunting for food for them, and I wonder what type of food she's going to hunt for them. Because you said worms, and you said fish, but I wonder if this bird does worms or fish. So that question could either push me forward in the story or looking back.
I think I know.
You think you know? What's your prediction?
Worms, because I've seen on bird movies where like birds go and get worms and then eat them and then spit it up too.
That would make a lot of sense. When I look back in the story, though, I don't think we have that evidence yet, do we? So that's a good prediction to keep in our mind. If we have a prediction, it's probably going to push us forward in the story to look for more evidence. So far, we just know she's going hunting. I wonder if you hunt for worms or if you hunt for something bigger than a worm. For food. So that's what we're going to do is we're going to be thinking about questions. So let's keep on reading, and then we'll pause and we'll ask some more questions. Everyone at the beginning of the story, we're going to read together. On your mark, get set, go. A bunch of chicks hatch to a mommy bird. She knows her young ones are hungry and they will need to eat. She knows she has to go hunting for food for them. Big and strong and full of might, the mommy bird is capable hunter. She is a hawk with sharp eyes and big talons. Pause. I don't know what that word talons means. Do you guys know what that word talons means? You know what that word talons means?
It's like claws.
Well, let's look. Was there a clue so far? Big eyes and big talons. Did that give us any clues yet? Let's keep reading and see if we can find a clue, though, okay? So let's go back to that paragraph. Big and strong. Ready, set, go. Big and strong and full of might, the mommy bird is a capable hunter. She is a hawk with sharp eyes and big talons. Talons are bird claws. Do we know what talons are now?
Claws.
What are they? Bird claws. Perfect. Let's keep going. The nest is high up in a towering oak tree. The chicks are hungry. The mommy bird takes off into the sky to find food. She soars through the air. The sun is out. There are no clouds, and the wind is blowing cool. The mommy bird enjoys the free feeling of flying. Down below on the ground, she spots a little mouse. She makes her move. With incredible speed, she dips her wings and begins shooting toward the ground. She pounces on the mouse and eats it up. Now she has food she can feed her babies. I'm wondering, what is the food she's going to feed her babies?
The mouse.
So this was one that didn't push me forward. I looked back for evidence, did I? Okay, I want you to finish the story whisper reading, and at the end, or somewhere along the way, I want you to ask yourself a question, because good readers ask themselves questions. So finish whisper reading the story, and make sure you ask a question at some point. So that's kind of an answer. That's what they were waiting for. So maybe your question was, what are they waiting for? Are they waiting to get filled? Something you were wondering. So I have a question too when it talks about how now she has food to feed her babies. How in the world does mommy having food
What?
cause the babies to get the
This
food?
word and is another way of saying that she brings the food swallowed back up to her mouth.
Yeah. So you looked at that word and maybe
But
that
I
word.
don't know if
That word is regurgitate. What is that word?
regurgitate.
Let's say the syllable. Regurgitate. Yeah. And so you kept reading. What was that word? And you read on to find the evidence. And the evidence said it's when they bring the food back up, basically spit it out into the baby. So that answers my question. How does mom getting food feed the babies? Well, she eats the food, stores it in her tummy, and then
Like shakes it up.
that is really gross. I'm sorry. That is just really gross.
Like how do they just swallow it first and then just keep down their tummy and then go.
That is another great question. How can they do that? But you know what? Not all of our questions get answered in the story, do they? Because it doesn't tell us how the mommy can do that. She just can. So we know that the more stories we read about a topic, the more our schema, our background knowledge grows. Go ahead and grab your birds, KWL. We've now read 2 stories, and we're ready to continue to think about, yes, I learned something that was on my K, or I answered my W, but we can also start to fill out the L column now. So is there anything you guys want to add to your L column of things that you learned now that you've read 2 stories about birds? once you get one idea written down, why don't you popcorn out what that idea is so that we can all hear each other's ideas of what we learned. I can look at what you learned, and you all learned the same type of thing. The same thing stuck with you. Someone want to tell me what it is that you learned, the thing you wrote down?
They eat the food and throw it back.
That sticks with kids now, doesn't it? So I saw that with yours too, right? And yours as well. I want us to close today to think about how did this help us to be better readers and better thinkers. We read An Owl is a Bird, and then we read, I lost my other copy, Mommy Bird Feeds Her Chicks. Why does reading this story and this story together help us to have more schema or background knowledge? How did the two of these work together?
They're both birds,
Mm-hmm.
and if an owl has babies, it has to do the same thing. If it was to just hold it, it would probably just rip the skin and then just fly it down, and then it'll probably run away, and then the owl could find it.
Yeah, we're making some assumptions. This story talked about that regurgitation. This story just said owls are good hunters, and so we're thinking maybe they use that regurgitation too. Helps us to think about two different types of birds and how maybe they might be the same. How does this help you, reading two stories about the same
The
topic?
same.
What about that? Tell me more.
That if the baby birds are hungry, the mom goes and finds food.
So that idea of how the hunting that this story talked about and how they get from hunting to feeding the baby. Something I noticed that this story talked a lot about the animal or the bird's parts, the soft feathers. I think you talked about the soft feathers, let them be very quiet when they fly, and the sharp talons. And then we had talons come up in here as well. This one helped me to kind of understand the parts of the bird. And then this one helped me to know how they use the parts of the bird. So sometimes by reading a couple different stories, I can get different pieces of information and put it together to have a deeper understanding. Tomorrow we'll keep working on our fluency and we'll keep thinking about perhaps expression, or we said maybe pace might be another choice. We'll learn some more vocabulary and some sight words because now mouse and ground should be easy to read in any stories that we read. And we'll keep thinking about how reading a couple different stories about a topic